Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mac Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. So today I want to talk to you about the essence of leadership. And I'm basically going to share 15 things that will help you become and be a better leader. These 15 things, I was reading a book recently. A friend of Ria's shared some quotes with us, or actually shared them with her. And she shared them with me, and I thought, man, this is pretty good stuff. And so I figured out the book it came from and told Rhea as soon as she shared it with me, I was like, order that book and let's check it out. So it's a small book. It's it's titled Dynamic Leadership. It was written in 1962, and the author's name is Wilford Lynn Fluckiger. Got to be careful with that one now. Last name is Fluckiger. And I had never heard of that person, and I hadn't really done any research on them, but Rhea did order the book. Again, it's a small book. It's got a lot of nuggets in it, though. I've read so much. If you know my past, my history, I've been reading every day since 2008. Sometimes I read books now, and I don't get very many nuggets. But this little book, there's some things in it that don't really interest me, but there's also a lot of nuggets in it. I've loaded up. I'm not even finished with the book yet, but I just wanted to share about it. And I'm gonna just there's one page in here that it's got a little section called the essence of leadership, and he lists 15 things, and I'm gonna share these 15 things with you, and I'm gonna share what he said about them. And basically, he just got one word with a sentence, and I'm gonna add to it and turn it into a podcast. But I'll make sure I give him credit for what he's saying here, and I'll do that as I go through each one of these traits, these components. But again, he says the essence of leadership, and he says, would you be a leader? And that's a question. The price is high. At least you must have all of these. And he lists out willingness, vision, imagination, tenacity, wisdom, enthusiasm, trust, understanding, patience, tact, courage, appreciation, self-control, resignation, and gratitude. So those are the 15 things I'm going to talk to you about today. And I'll share what he said about each one of them. Again, he only shared like a few words about each one, but I'm going to add a little bit to it. But when I read it, I was like, this would be a good podcast right here. Share it with my Blue Collar Leadership Podcast Network. I shared the name of the book. I shared the author's name. So you can dive into it and find it if you want to on Amazon, I'm sure. You may or may not like it. Again, I got a lot of nuggets. I read books for the nuggets, and sometimes I get a bonus and I actually like the book. And this book's got some good stuff. Some of it doesn't interest me, but again, a lot of nuggets in it. So he says about willingness, he says willingness to live a project into your heart at great personal sacrifice. And basically what he's talking about there is you got to live it. Whatever you're focused on, he's talking about a project, willingness to live a project into your heart at great personal sacrifice. He basically means you bought in, whatever the project is. And again, all these words are in the context of the essence of leadership, what it takes to lead well. You got to be bought in. When I hear him talking about willingness, that's what I'm reading into that. You got to be bought in. If you're not bought in, it's going to be awfully hard to motivate and influence other people on your team to be bought in. So as a leader, it starts with you. Are you willing to make the sacrifice? A lot of people don't even consider sacrifice when you talk about being bought in to a project. But a lot of times you got to come in early, you got to stay late, you got to work weekends, you got to do research, you got to do a whole lot of stuff that if you're not bought in, it ain't going to happen. And as a leader, you got to be there. You got to be part of it. You can't do 9 to 5 and expect everybody else is doing you do an 8-hour shift, everybody else is doing 12, 16-hour shift. Everybody else working weekends, you don't even show up on the weekend. You ain't even a part of it. Yeah, you can pay people and you can expect them to do that job, and they can do it halfway. But if you bought in as a leader, you're going to get your team bought in. You're going to make stuff happen. You're going to make it happen fast. So the second thing he was talking about in the essence of leadership, he says vision. Vision to find clear and noble objectives. What he's talking about there is, as a leader, you're focusing on things that matter. You're not just doing things for the sake of doing things. Like a lot of clients that we have, a noble objective. Think about finding a clear and noble objective. One thing that our clients find related to that is cultural transformation. Most folks, it's pretty clear. A lot of industries and a lot of organizations, most of the people know they need cultural transformation. Even if they don't know how to articulate it, they know they need it. So when they have a leader who's focused on that, they see it as a noble objective. There are plenty more noble objectives. I'm just giving you an example from the world I live in relative to leadership development, personal growth, cultural transformation, organizational change, all that sort of stuff. So if the leaders has the willingness and the vision, they can develop a high degree of influence. Remember, I define leadership as influence. So this whole podcast could be titled The Essence of Influence as a leader. The next thing he talks about is imagination. Imagination to figure out the steps necessary to reach these objectives. So leaders, a lot of times, they don't know how they're going to accomplish the mission. But the leader needs to have the imagination to be able to figure it out, to be able to lead the team to figure it out. Because the leader may not even have the answer. But if the leader does have the imagination and the ability to figure out the steps to achieve the objective effectively, well, they're going to develop a lot of influence. I agree with all these 15 components that the author's talking about here. The next one is tenacity. Tenacity to find those who are willing to give help. Again, I'm going to use probably throughout this talk today, I'm going to talk about cultural transformation. I'm going to just use it as the example. There could be thousands of things that a leader is trying to accomplish, thousands of objectives. When we talk about the tenacity to find those who are willing to give help relative to cultural transformation, the leader has to have the tenacity to go out and find the hungry people. They got to stay the course. They got to model it. They got to live it. If you want cultural transformation, it starts with a top leader. And I'm going to do a podcast on this, maybe the next one. But I shared something on my social media the other day. I said the 4 greatest obstacles to cultural transformation in order. Number 1, the top leader. Number 2, upper management. Number 3, middle management. Number 4, frontline supervision. Those are the 4 greatest obstacles to cultural transformation. And it starts with the top leader. If the top leader is not bought in, if they're not willing, if they don't have the vision, the imagination to figure out how to get there, the tenacity to stay the course, those 4 things we've already talked about today, it's not going to happen. If the top leader doesn't have it, it's not going to happen. If somebody else has it at some other level lower than the top leader, they may grow and help the organization, but at some point they're going to reach the top leader's leadership lid because the top leader is not on board, and then it's all going to stop. And the person who helped make it happen, they probably going to jump ship and go find another ship to sail on. And most often that person, if they're close to the top leader, a lot of times they'll go somewhere else and they'll become the top leader. And then they'll transform the next organization they go to. They're just training and developing themselves if they're in an organization. Or I should say they're training and developing themselves for what's next if they're in an organization where the top leader is not truly bought in. So let's jump on to the next thing. He talks about wisdom. Wisdom to recognize desire for achievement and to match opportunity to it. So I just talked about tenacity. One way, again, there's a lot of principles here in this lesson. They can be applied in multiple ways. But when he's talking about the wisdom to recognize desire for achievement and to match opportunity to it, he's talking about finding the hungry and feeding them. Using my words, that's what I always talk about. Got to find the hungry, and then we got to feed them. So the hunger in people is their desire for achievement, using his words. And when he says match the opportunity, that's when I'm talking about feeding the hungry. That means what he said, literally, give them an opportunity. The hungry people want to help. Let them help. Don't worry about their position and their title and their rank. Let them help. If they can accomplish the mission at some point, I'm sure you're going to give them an opportunity. I'm sure you're going to give them a position or title or a promotion. If you're one of the people and you're not the boss, you go out and make it happen. And then you're going to be given opportunities for advancement. You don't have to take them, but it's nice to have them. If you don't want them, you just tell them you ain't interested. If you are, well, there's your chance. You just earned it. So go on to the next component that he talks about. Again, the essence of leadership. He talks about enthusiasm. And he says enthusiasm to inspire to higher goals. So when a leader has a lot of enthusiasm, that enthusiasm relates and converts into inspiration for others. But also, if you've got enthusiasm, you're inspired to achieve higher goals and to set higher goals for yourself because you're fired up. And if you can fire other people up, they want to do more, you want to do more, you're going to make some things happen. So as a leader, do you have enthusiasm? As a person, remember, leadership's influence. So everything I'm sharing with you today doesn't have to be the top leader. I'm kind of talking about it in the top leader context, but leadership is influence. Everyone is a leader. Everyone has influence. So it doesn't matter your level, your position, your title, your rank, any of that stuff. It doesn't matter. These things I'm sharing with you today, they're going to help you increase your influence. You figure out how to apply them. You figure out what it means for you. The next thing on his list of 15 is trust. Trust to accept in advance the unknown performance of others. And that's a big one. It's really a big one for me because when I logged those 11,000 hours of leading cross-functional teams through process improvement, 11,000 hours between 2005 and 2012. I'd show up on Monday and I'd get a team of people that I didn't know. Right here, the author talks about the trust to accept in advance the unknown performance of others. As a lean manufacturing consultant, I'm basically saying, I'm trusting these people before I ever even meet them. Just give me a team. I'm going to make it happen. I don't know them. I don't know their performance. I don't know if they're good or they're bad, if they're hard workers, if they don't like the work, if they don't like the boss. I don't know. but I would trust and accept them in advance. Again, I'm going to use his exact words. He says, trust to accept in advance the unknown performance of others. And the reason I could do that is because I knew when I walked in, I'm the leader. I'm the leader. I know how to lead, and I'm going to lead. So I could accept in advance the unknown performance of others, because what I knew is I was going to make it happen, and I was going to make it happen with that team. That's leadership. I'm responsible. Anybody could do it, but most people won't do it. And what I had to learn to do, and I did it highly effectively on those teams, was really this list of 15 things. This is a great list. The next thing on his list is understanding. He says, understanding to see excellence in another when only the inadequate is obvious. Wow, that's pretty powerful. I'm going to read that one again. Understanding, as a leader, you have the understanding to see excellence in another when only the inadequate is obvious. And what he's talking about is seeing people for their potential, maybe unrealized, untapped potential. And no one can see it. They may not be living it, but you can see it, and you believe in them, and you help unleash their potential. I mean, my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Supervision, the subtitle is Unleash Your Team's Potential. That one line right there, understanding to see excellence in another when only the inadequate is obvious. Managers of people, they're not going to unleash their team's potential. They can't even understand they have more potential. They don't even know they have more potential themselves. And I'm talking about managers of people. They can't look in the mirror and see potential, and they can't look out the window and see potential. That's a sad place to be. But most people report to a leader like that. And that's a very low-level leader, a low-impact leader, using my terms, managers of people. The next item, the next thing he talks about, patience. Patience never to accuse another of inefficiency. Boy, I got that one wrong when I was young. Earlier in my life, the first 10 years of my career, if not more, I didn't have that patience, never to accuse another of inefficiency. I did right the opposite. I was impatient, and I was glad to point out to the boss and anybody else, all the people who were being inefficient. They were everywhere. Pretty sad, my level of character I used to have. But I'm much better today, and I'm here to tell you, you don't have to be sick to get better. But if you're sick, like I was, you need to get better. And I just mean sick from a leadership standpoint, from a personal development standpoint. I had a lot of work to do, but I've done a lot of work now. And I can see how I was wrong, and I can see how this line right here is 100% accurate. He says again, patience never to accuse another of inefficiency. You there to help as a leader, not to blame. You may see it, but you don't focus on it. You're there to accomplish the mission. You're there to motivate, inspire, and move people to help you accomplish the mission. Again, it doesn't matter about your title, your position, your rank. Doesn't matter if anybody reports to you. You take these traits and you make it happen. The next item he talks about, tact, T-A-C-T. Tact, he says, tact to give helpful counsel painlessly. Tact to give helpful counsel painlessly. He could say advice or feedback using, more common words today, but he says helpful counsel painlessly. He could say helpful advice painlessly. He could say helpful feedback painlessly. It's the same thing. The key there is to give feedback painlessly. Do it in a way that's intended to help, and it's not intended to blame, meaning you're being tactful. Managers of people can't do that. Well, they could. They just choose not to. They don't value it. Leaders of people do value it. You're trying to increase your influence. You're trying to build trust. So as a leader, you don't want to do things that hurt your team in any kind of way. that demoralize your team, that slow your team down, that decreases your influence. So let's go on to the next item, is courage. He says courage to stand alone when a righteous principle is in jeopardy. That means he's talking about you stand for principles. And I'm going to say you align as a high impact leader, you align your values with righteous principles. And you got to stand for them. And I had to do that a lot in my life. The greater my leadership became, meaning the more I become developed as a leader, I had to stand alone a lot of times when a righteous principle was in jeopardy. Even today, I still have to stand alone sometimes because I operate in a world full of managers of people. And a lot of times there's a high impact leader of people who's in that situation, who's brought me in to help them transform the organization, the culture. So there's a lot of people who don't know what they don't know, but they think they know. And I ain't joining their team because what I know is they don't know. And I do know. And what I know is I know about principles. I understand principles like gravity. Somebody tells me gravity ain't real. Well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to stand alone and say, I think it is real. I don't care what you think you know. Gravity is real. I've experienced it my entire life. So a lot of these principles, they're kind of like gravity, but gravity is easy for you to see and understand. That's why I use it so often. But there's principles relative to influencing people. They're the same way. They're there, they're real, but a lot of people don't know them. They don't understand them. The next thing he says is appreciation. Appreciation, he says, to give full due credit for only limited performance. What about that? He's saying you appreciate your team, the people on your team, the people who are supporting you. You're willing to give full due credit for only limited performance. You're going to give credit to people who maybe aren't performing at a high level. They're on your team. If they're on your team, guess what? They're on the team. Treat them like they're on the team. If you think they're not doing a good enough job to be on the team, then get them off the team. But if they're on the team, be the leader. Be their leader. See the good in them. Lift them up. Help them. Everybody's not going to be a 10. Even if you can imagine everybody's a 10, something changes now. All of a sudden, somebody ain't a 10 now who was a 10 yesterday because something's different, and they need some work in that area. The next thing that he talks about, self-control. And he says self-control to be joyfully optimistic when only failure is apparent. What about that one? He's basically telling you to be happy when all you see on the horizon is failure. Again, his words, self-control to be joyfully optimistic when only failure is apparent. And I can tell you this, when all they can see is failure, low impact leaders, managers of people, they're not going to be optimistic. They're going to be pessimistic. They're going to be looking for the worst in everything. So he's talking about self-control. I learned it from, from Dr. Covey in the 7 Habits. He talked about being proactive. That's self-control. Choose your response in any given situation. Respond based on values, not feelings and emotions. You see how all these things could tie back. And I could take all of these things and tie them to the 7 Habits, but I'm not going to do that. But I could. That right there was just blatantly obvious that I thought I needed to. The next thing, get 2 more to go here. The next one he says resignation. His words, resignation to accept responsibility for group failures. That's pretty powerful. He's talking about accepting responsibility for group failures. You're the leader. You've heard me say this over and over throughout my podcast. The leader is always responsible. And again, you may not be the top leader. You just may be an entry-level frontline worker on a team. But the moment you start taking responsibility for failures of the team, that's the moment you're stepping into high impact leadership behavior. It ain't, again, not about your rank, title, position, all that stuff. It's about who you are. Anybody at any level can take responsibility for group failures. But if you're a formal authority leader and you want to be seen as a high impact leader, you must do that. It's expected of you because you're in a leadership position. You're in a leadership role. You got to say, I'm responsible no matter what. But again, anybody could say that. Imagine if everybody said that, how awesome that team would be to be on. Nobody's blaming. We're all accepting responsibility. We're all looking for what role did we play? What could we have done to prevent something from happening? What should we have done to make something happen? And then he wraps up with the last trait of the 15, gratitude. He says, gratitude to credit others for group accomplishments. That means don't take the credit. You know, that's what I talk about. Don't take the credit. Give credit to others. But he's talking about specifically relative to accomplishments. He's saying have expressed gratitude to credit others for group accomplishments. So as a leader, you got gratitude. If you're trying to take credit for something, you ain't going to have gratitude because there's nothing to be grateful for. You did it. If you know they did it and you treat them like they did it, then you appreciate it and you express gratitude to the folks, to the team. You got to have to do these 15 things. Most leaders, most people who are low impact leaders, because that's who most formal authority leaders are. They're low impact leaders, managers of people. To be able to effectively live out these 15 things that the author here says are the essence of leadership. If you're able to live these, you've already done a lot of character development. If you're not living these things, or you have team members or leaders who report to you that you wish they were doing these things, they got to have a lot of character development. If they're not doing them and you want them to do them, it's not like walking over to a light switch. Someone has to develop these people. So if you're listening, that's awesome. You're developing yourself. You're allowing me to help you develop yourself. But you be that person for someone else. You may have a team that I'm never, ever going to meet, ever. You go develop them. Play my podcast. Talk to them about it. Have a discussion around it. Get my books. Episode 305, I taught you how to do a book study. Go do a book study. Get your team books. Invest in the people. Maybe you're a frontline entry-level worker, but if you got some influence, if you don't want to invest your own money to buy some people on your team a book, see if you can influence the leader to buy the books, or see if you can influence some individuals to buy their own books. You guys do your own book study. Develop yourself. And then if you don't get opportunities in the organization that you want, take that development, go get you a job somewhere else. Start your own company. You grow and develop yourself, you're going to have all kinds of options. You grow and develop others, you're going to have all types of people who want to help you succeed because you're helping them succeed. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from the book. Underneath those 15 things I just shared with you, he had one more line just to sum it all up, basically. He says, above all, the awareness that leadership is satisfying and challenging, even though its rewards may not come until long after the task is complete. You lead because it's the right thing to do. Leadership, high impact leadership, is not developed in a day, it's developed daily. Building a high performance team doesn't happen in a day, it happens daily. One of the 15 things he talks about was patience. Do you have the patience to grow and develop yourself into a high impact leader? Do you have the patience to grow and develop others into high impact leaders? Can you see them Even if they're on the front lines becoming a high impact leader, are you willing to develop them? If you are, go check out episode 65, that 30-part series on my book, Blue Collar Leadership, Leading from the Front Lines. When I wrote that book, I was seeing people for their potential, not for who they are. I want to develop frontline entry-level people into high-impact leaders. I need your help. Make it happen. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.